Hi everyone, good day, and thank you so much for watching our talk today. So please join us and welcome my Stevenson. Thank you very much, Mai, for spending your time with us. And it's such a privilege that we have you here and so pleased that we can connect virtually. Today actually is our holiday in Vietnam, but we're so happy to connect with you and your story will inspire us all. To start, would you please share a bit about yourself and how have your journey has been until maybe today, just to give us a bit of your background?
Yeah, well, at the moment, what I do um, is to speak. I do motivational speaking, but motivational speaking is not simply standing up and doing a rah rah rah. It's actually about understanding what drives people and understanding what blocks people. And at times like these, it's really important to give people a sense of their power and their ability to transform themselves and their environment. So that's what I do just now. Now, how I got here is a much longer story, but suffice to say, I was not an educational success story. I was thrown out of school at 15, and circumstances just determined that I should leave home. So I went down to London and I started working, which was great. But after a few months, I lost my job and I lost my accommodation. So I ended up sleeping out on the streets of London, which was a very difficult experience. But I also thought it was probably the best educational experience I could have, because you have to survive, you have to, constantly look for ways to find food, to find shelter, to find comfort. But you make friends and you see the circumstances that other people have been brought to the streets with. So it was a great learning experience. I then went to Dublin in Ireland, where I busked. I played the guitar and sang on the streets, and that was it showed me that I was a performer. So I came alive when I stood in front of an audience, and it really told me something about myself. And then I had a succession of jobs, from every industry: the steelworks, building, hospitals, hospitality. I could go through the list, and it would amaze you how many I had before the age of 26. And then, to cut a long story short, I became a community worker. That's working with people. Now, that was really important because you bring so much knowledge from being out in the streets and working in all these different industries of what makes people tick. So this was at a community level, and we did a lot of really good work there. And by the age of 43, I decided that I wanted to, set up a business. So I set up a marketing company with a partner. We did really well for 19, 20, 21 years. And then the banking recession came along, and there was a crash. And I could not keep the company going. So that's when I turned to do what I do now, which is the speaking and the writing. It's people want a sense of hope. But they also beside them, they have the tools to do far more than they believe they can do. And I think the benefit of going through what I've gone through is that I can tell it all in stories. It's not out of textbooks, it's not a theory. This is real. This is the life I've lived. And if I can do it, anyone could do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Mike, we're gonna bring you all the way before the age of 15, okay? And when you were
Yeah.
a little boy back then, what did you dream one day you're gonna become?
Well, I don't think I did. I I didn't have a good childhood. I spent 3 years in Pakistan with my parents, and that was a big. Well, actually, I don't remember much before Pakistan because I was 3.5 when I went to Pakistan, and then coming back, the culture shock was just extraordinary. I hadn't experienced the cold, and also, I was suddenly in a in an entirely different social situation. So I found it hard to make friends right at the beginning. My mother was Lebanese, so I had this kind of racial difference, although you're not aware of it as a child. Children don't wake up and say, "Oh, I'm different." And then I think that I knew I was creative. All the things I thought about were in the arts. I loved, pictures. I loved drawing. I loved making things up. And then I picked up the guitar, so it was definitely in the arts. And I suppose, yes, I did have a dream, but it's probably when I was a bit into my early teens, I could only dream of being a rock star, being on stage, playing music, entertaining people. And I'd never got that chance at school, because formal learning at school detaches you from those kind of individual talents, because you have to hone down on a subject area. And I'll just say something very briefly about that, because I was told, or I was taught, that I wasn't good at any of these subjects. But when I went out into the world, I found I was. I found I could write. I could read. I loved literature. I loved poetry. And then you found out that I'll never be a mathematical genius, but I can use numbers too. I don't like using numbers. It's not my thing, but I'm not useless. So you find out that you absorb education out of living. And there wasn't enough relationship between school and the life beyond that, because we were all kind of corralled into going for a professional qualification. In other words, going to university, becoming a lawyer or an accountant. And that wasn't me.
Yeah, Mike. So you share a bit about, a long list of jobs that you're working, and the resilience that you keep on, and the dream that to become a rock star performer. Time to time, things may make you feel disappointed because it's not getting to the way that you are dreaming of. How would you find the inspiration to keep carry on your dream and getting to where you want to become today?
Yeah, well, it's not an easy answer, but when I was sleeping out, I developed this philosophy, because there were only two ways to go. One was down, and that would actually mean death. In Britain last year, 1,276 people died on the streets, homeless people. And in the city just 45 miles away from me in Glasgow, 80 died on the streets in 1 year. Now, I was in that situation. I could have been, really ground down by it, but I taught myself this phrase, which was, the best is yet to come. So I've lived by that, and I've had falls, believe me. It's not been an upward trajectory uninterrupted. Losing the company, I lost a lot of money. And I was in my 60s then. So, what do? You say, well, my life is finished, that's it. No, I have the same philosophy, the best is yet to come. And I do believe that my best years are still to come, and I'm now 71. So it is that. And knowing that when you fall, you can get up again. And knowing that when you fall, when you get up, you've learned from that fall. So you're slightly stronger, you're better equipped. So I think that's my philosophy, that, you do have tumbles, you have major disappointments. And, every major disappointment is an opportunity to regather your strength. And disappointments actually can drive you rather than knock you down. So that's, it's now a natural part of my makeup, so I don't have to work at that now. So when others think this is the end, I think this is a new beginning.
What a
That's
wonderful,
very positive. Okay, yeah.
What's wonderful mindset that you are having and sharing to the people of the audience, Mike. I would like to bring you back to the age of 15 because like that is what 55 years ago, 56 years ago, right? And
Yes.
that's a long time. That's a long time ago. But then we would like to understand. It was a school literally just throw you out of the system because of economic failure.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing well at school. I I was actually at school at the same time as the future British Prime Minister, and it's a very good school, a very good school. But it's a very good school if you are, you know, driving yourself towards an academic and university career. I wasn't. That wasn't the motivation. So I just kind of, just existed at school. I was probably very distracted. I might have had ADHD or one of these conditions, but they weren't invented then. And so I was distracted. My mind was always in music, in glamour, and things, aesthetics, and so I was brought into the headmaster's office, and he said, this is not working for you, and it's not working for us. But one thing he said, which I thought was really interesting, he said, you may be some use to industry. Now, industry was what was driving the British economy. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that industry was seen as some kind of second class occupation. And actually, it was British industry that was driving the economy, that was providing the education to create professionals and put people in university. So I never thought of that at the time, but I did, years later, thinking, what an absurd thing to say. And that showed you, I think, the value of the education I had, that I wasn't really a part of it. And then, at the same time, my parents were breaking up. Their marriage was falling apart. And that was a big thing in my life because, when you've got this sense of family, and particularly when you've moved around a lot, family becomes everything. It becomes your every security. And when that began to fall apart, well, I couldn't deal with it. I had to get away, which is why I went down to London. And so everything seemed to fall apart when I was 13, 14, 15. And I may not have known it at the time, but perhaps my schooling reflected my home life. Because when your parents get distracted by their own challenges, they become a bit more inward and a bit more focused on each other and protecting themselves. And the children can sometimes suffer because they are not the absolute focus. So I probably suffered from that a lot. But I did not feel bad when I was sent away from school. I felt liberated, I'm not going to say I was a failure and I felt like a failure. I didn't. I felt like I've been liberated and I can now live my life. I had no idea how I was going to live my life, but I just went and lived life and learnt so much in those years. I can't tell you how much you learn. And it's not the conventional way of learning, but, you pick up, I think, empathy, you make emotional connections with people, and you begin to understand humanity. And when you begin to understand how humans respond around you, then you begin to become a communicator because you know you're communicating with people, and people who are fragile, people who are strong, people who are ambitious, people who have no ambition. So I think, as in terms of what I do just now, that learning was invaluable. I cannot imagine I would be doing what I do just now if I hadn't had that experience. So getting thrown out of school at the age of 15 was not the schooling that upset me, it was the circumstances around my family, and also the fact that I used to get beaten up. There was a gang that used to, meet me around the corner almost every day,
What?
and they would punch and kick me. And, you know, eventually you stop feeling the punches, and you just kind of settle for it. You think, oh, well, here we go again. And you began to almost enjoy the punches because it was giving you attention. That sounds really warped, but it's true. It's better to be punched and kicked than not noticed. So that was the around that time, and you know, I didn't seem to have a route then. The roots had been pulled up, so I was adrift. So I went off and made my own way, and difficult as it was, I developed my own personality. And sometimes, you know, your own personality can be shaped by the people around you. I don't think mine was. I think mine was carved by going off on my own and facing the fear of, you know, the unknown.
We thank you for sharing that personal story that you have. And then, but then when after you left the school year and then start going to what we call life, and then it seems like life is not welcoming you in a nice way, but keep pushing the boundary and keep pushing and you know the limitation on you. And then how things happen after that? Would you share with us?
Yeah, well, I think that I had asthma as a child. I still do. So I was a sick child. And so if I'd said to the doctor, do you think I should go down to London and sleep out and smoke? And, you know, he would have said, that's going to kill you. But I did that. And actually, you know, taking risks becomes quite an exhilarating thing to do. I didn't feel like it was a risk, but it was a risk because I didn't know where I was going. I found myself with people who, you know, could have been enemies, they could have been a threat. And I made friends and I began to develop my own personality. And I think that's really important because when you're out on your own, you have no choice but to become who you can be. You have no choice. You can't say, oh, I better go back and ask, you know, my parents who I am, what my heritage is. You don't have any choice. And I really enjoyed those few years because I was taking risks beyond my imagination. I enjoyed taking risks. I enjoyed pushing boundaries. I enjoyed being out of the bubble. And that is such rich learning. I mean, for some it can kill them. For some it could end in serious, you know, mental scars and damage. But for me, it was a liberation. And risk-taking is something that a lot of people steer clear of. And yet it is the most exhilarating thing that any human being can do. I mean, you see it in Formula One, all dangerous sports, but it's something that we need to do. And I think children need to take risks as well, not risks of life, but, you know, we become sometimes overprotective of children. And children are incredibly resilient, but you have to allow them a bit of space to breathe. And I hadn't been allowed that space because the asthma was, don't run, you know, put your scarf on. You were never able to keep up with your friends if they were running. So you become much more enclosed in your limitations. And I didn't want to focus on my limitations because I knew what they were. I wanted to blast through those limitations. So it was, I think, that each day taught me that I was stronger and more resourceful and cleverer than I'd ever been given credit for. And actually, my health improved too, because I built upper body strength, and, you know, the asthmatic began to fade into the background, and I became a new person. And when I eventually, you know, came back home and people saw me again, I was unrecognizable as a person.
Wow. Mike.
I'm not recommending it. That's a course that everyone takes. It just happens to be mine, you know? That's my story, and it will be different from everyone else. But the thing about taking risks is really important, because so many people say, I don't eat that. I don't do that. I hate opera. I hate football. I hate this. I hate that. And you think, why? Have you tried it? Well, no. Actually, no, I haven't. But go on. Taste something you've never tasted before. And we'll put those limitations on. We've all seen it, haven't we? People say, oh, no, that's not for me. You think, why? I said, don't like it. Have you experienced it? Well, no. And that's what human beings do to themselves. They start putting up little walls and starting to express their life as a series of. I always think if you fear doing something, do it. Do you know I didn't learn to swim until I was 62 years old?
Wow.
But I love to swim.
Mike, you've been living a life that's very different to majority of the people on this planet Earth, right? And so and then for us to realize the the hardship that you've been through, would you be able to share, like the worst day of your life back then was, so that we can at least envision what it was that Mike Stevenson had been dealing with during your teenager time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst day in my life came actually just after that, because it was all a roller coaster. It was all fun. It was all new learning. It was when I had a relationship, and I'd never been in a relationship before. And when it broke down, I found that really difficult to cope with. It was like all the hurt of my parents breaking up, all the hurt of being detached from my family, it suddenly came racing back, and I realised I had a fear of abandonment, because it's better for me to abandon than for somebody else to abandon me, and that was a very low point. I didn't have any tools to deal with it, so that was something else I had to learn. I honestly thought, this is the end of my life. I don't want to live another day, and I took pills, and I nearly killed myself. And it was this sense of abandonment. Now, I hadn't experienced that in that raw way before. And of course, a lot of people will relate to that. A lot of people relate to the breakdown of relationship and what that does to you. And I think that in some ways, I was causing that breakup, pushing away in case I got too attached. So that's something I learned about myself, and it took 2 or 3 relationships to even begin to understand what was going on. And I think that what I was doing was almost pushing people away, because I didn't want that raw sense of loss. So I was creating the breakups in the relationship and then suffering the consequences. And I can never understand how someone could be so cold after being so warm. And I mean, other people learn that faster. Other people learn that later on in life. But I didn't have that feeling, oh, this is a problem, I'll just get up from it. I had to learn how to do that. But every time I recovered from a breakup, I was in a better position than I was before, because I'd learned something. And, you learn each time that you have another strength. And so that was the worst day of my life. I can remember it. I can remember it, I can smell it, I can taste it, It was this announcement that this girl I was going out with was leaving. But she wasn't just leaving me, she was going abroad. And it was just so difficult, and I felt abandoned, and I felt completely lost. The world seemed like a black place. And I think that's probably a build-up of, I'd taken risks. I never thought a relationship would be a risk.
It's such an inspiration story, because recently in Vietnam, the stress of the school, pretty much a lot of the students have a negative actions to manage that kind of stress. So your story I hope that the entire audience may translate into Vietnamese and hope them to find set the story, face your fear, embrace the failure, and then eventually you move your comfort zone. But one question I have in mind, a lot of the situations you're in, you manage yourself to stand up, to try again. Have you ever have a thought of asking for help? Or if you've been asking and then if anyone reaching their hand out to help you?
I'm not good at asking for help.
Mm.
Not good at giving help. And I think there's two things at play here. One is I was brought up as a male. Well, I still am a male, but we were taught, and it's quite deep in the culture. It's all changed now, but you were taught, boys don't cry, big boys don't cry, you're a man. So we developed no more emotional intelligence. And I think I did develop that emotional intelligence. But the one thing that really is difficult is to ask for help, because if you're opening yourself up, and you're saying, I need help. And I still carried that, and I probably still carry it, that sense that, you're on your own. And I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I just want to say that. I am vulnerable, I'm frail, people know it, they know I've got my fragilities. Sorry, I'm just plugging my laptop into the charger. But no, I've never been good at asking for help, or I ask for help in very indirect ways. It's not, hey, I'm looking for help. And sometimes I have looked for help and I haven't got it because people haven't picked up on it. But there are always people around to help you, and particularly now when things have moved on so much that young people are more alert about supporting each other, that teachers are more alert about the need to support children emotionally. It was nothing like that when I was at school. I mean, nothing. It was a cold classroom. It was all about coming on time, doing your lessons. No one ever said, Michael, how are you today?
Yeah.
No one ever asks you what you're good at. And then we tell young people, these are the best days of your life, which is nonsense. Imagine that. You've got all this teenage angst. You've got spots bursting out in your face, and you've been bullied. You're not doing well at school. Your parents are squabbling at home, and then people say it gets worse now, because that's the opposite. Or that's what they're saying when they're saying these are the best days of your life. And I say no, the best days are still to come. But asking for help now is so much more easy than when I was being brought up. So if I was being brought up today, I would ask for help. And I suppose what we have to know for children is they can ask someone for help who's not a parent. That's so important, because, parents can be the cause. Parents may not know they're the cause. It may be something they're doing that just makes the child feel alienated or belittled or ignored. So there has to be someone outside the immediate family. And teachers are obviously the best people. But, children who are anxious, we need to lift that anxiety. It's really important. You can eat away, and I was lucky because I escaped from it. But that's not the answer. Escaping is not the answer. There has to be better. Now, some people I know, they send their teenage sons to me so that I can talk to them just informally on my own. And the difference it makes? It's extraordinary. Because I'm not saying, look, if you turn to page 7 and look under, relationship breakup, you will find a whole chapter. I don't do that. I can see very, very quickly where their feelings might be and what might be holding them back. And I've got a good success rate. And when I think of my age, 71 now, and I think of their age, 15, 16, I think, how am I making that impact? But there is something about older people and children that we have removed from our culture here. And it's important. It's a great chemistry. You know, kids love to hear stories, and I tell stories.
So, Mike, when your business that you've been running for 21 years
Yeah,
got onto a challenging time, not and then you quickly believe that the best is yet to come, and then starting again
yeah,
something new, and then that at that point there's a lot of something new that you could do, but you chose to be an inspirational speaker, a trainer on
yeah.
creativity, on persuasion, and what make you, what calling did you respond back then to start the whole career in the very new direction,
That's
though?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think I can answer it in this way: that when I had the company, I first of all started with a partnership, and then I bought
Mm,
my partner out, and I loved working with the clients
mm,
because clients will come to you and ask for something, and if you're courageous enough, you say, "Look, I can do something better than that, and
wow.
I'll tell you why."
Mm,
And you also say, "Look, let me help you to get your staff on side."
mm,
So we're doing something new here. It's a marketing campaign, but really, or a branding or whatever. But really, it has to be owned by your people.
mm,
So I started doing these talks and these workshops, and so that's really where it started. Um, I'd spoken before, and I'd spoken quite a lot, but this was a sense that I had the ability and the power to be able to, get people thinking very positively about a new direction,
mm,
and lift their sense of collective spirit, that you turn a job description into a purpose, that you turn, the what do you do every day, and people say things like, I sell insurance, and you say, why don't you say, I help people sleep at night?
mm,
Because people will tell you what their job title is. You say, what do you do? And they say, I'm an assistant customer advisor.
mm,
And I think that tells you nothing. It tells you nothing about their passion. It tells you nothing about why they're doing the job. So,
mm,
I put a smile on people's faces. I help people sleep at night.
mm.
I bring joy to children's faces. I helped to put a rocket on the moon, which
Mm.
was what
Uh, Kennedy.
one of the cleaners at NASA
Mm,
said to Lyndon B. Johnson. It's a great story, but actually there's a lot in that story.
mm,
So we need to get people thinking about the why. I'll tell you a story. I was in Beirut,
mm,
and this was in 2006, and it was immediately after that relentless 2 weeks of bombing. When I look at the images in Ukraine now, and I think back, I don't just see a picture. I can smell it. I can feel. I can experience what's going on there, and it's horrible. So I was in this area that had been razed to the ground. There were bits of concrete on top of cars. There were all these little accoutrements of life, tablecloths, children's toys, crushed furniture. And then on top of the rubble was a man selling clothes, dresses, shirts, trousers. And I said to my cousin who I was with, wow, that's very entrepreneurial. And he said that used to be a shop. 2 days ago, that was his shop.
mm,
And I said, wow. So I went up to him and I said, it must have been horrible to lose your shop. And he said, I'm not a shopkeeper. I give people style and confidence. And I
wow.
thought, that's the best example of purpose I've ever heard. Because if he'd thought that his whole life was based around the shop,
Mm,
he would have lost everything.
wow.
But that wasn't his purpose. The shop was just a vehicle.
Mm,
So he could carry on. During lockdown here, some of these very well-starred restaurants, they had to close. But some of them started putting, boxes together where they prepared the sauces, they put in all the herbs, all the spices, and they sent them in a package, with very simple cooking instructions. Now that's genius, because they are making money because they're still tantalizing people's taste buds. So if they said, I'm a restaurateur, my life is suspended until, I can go back into the restaurant, they would have lost a lot of money. But they said, we will keep, exciting people's taste buds. And they carried on. So that's the kind of thing. If you say, I work in an office. I'm an office worker. I'm an admin. When I say to people, and they say, I'm just an administrator. And I say, you mean you're the engine oil of the organization? It changes the mood. And that's so important, because we are so used to being labeled and then using those labels that other people give us. And this is one piece of advice, when people ask you what you're doing, don't say I'm reading a book. Don't say I'm studying. I remember this little boy, 15, and I asked him what his dream was, and he said, I'm going to cure Alzheimer's.
Wow, at the age of 15.
At the age of 15. And his teacher said, well, first you've got to pass your exams, and you've got it was offended and hurt by that, because he knew that, his big purpose in life was to cure Alzheimer's. He knew how to get there. He didn't need to be told.
That's sad how people with low dream in their lives actually give out advice and stop people from growing. I have one guest came to my show last month, and his name is Arthur Kamazi. So I can connect the two of you because you guys are wonderful together. And so Arthur was when he was at the third grade, he was deemed by his teacher as a special kid. And by special kid, he also say in the show that they meant that he was stupid. Then they need to put him onto the special program. But then there was a very good teacher. I think the name of the teacher is Teacher Pashem. And then he had the trust on Arthur. So he spent more time with Arthur after school to teach him, to sit down with him. And you know what? Now Arthur is ranking number one in culture, culture, organizational development in the world. And then he traveled the world. He has a company in every continent, and then he got practitioners license under his works. And amazing, he said that if back then everybody was thinking that hey, I am special, and then it's special treatments, and if he allows himself to take on that, believe that he's special needs, and then life will be a lot challenging for him. That's a lot of things that's not going to be coming out to the world beautiful like what he do right now. And the same like you, Mike. So thank you so much for demonstrating a great personality, a great character, facing with challenging and always had the belief that better is yet to come. And I always also living in that philosophy of life. So Vivian and I also believe that there's also something that's great waiting ahead. So our job is just to be the best version of ourselves, and then regardless, just heading there, keep going, keep growing. So thanks, Mike, for doing it. If you look at, I want to go to the last question for our conversation today. And so if you rewire your life, for that 71 years, and then there's things that you would want people not to do, and then there's things that you want people to carry on your legacy. What would those be?
Well, I think you've just mentioned one of them, actually, in your story, which sounds amazing. Well, the first one is, what people think is your disadvantage, turn it into your advantage.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You look at the Paralympians, you look at Paralympics, and you have people who have had terrible things happen to them, and they emerge stronger, and their personality is bigger after it. Because, what is a disadvantage? There's no such thing as a disadvantage unless you tell yourself and you accept what other people say. So that's the first one. And I was asthmatic, I was small, I was probably, pigeon-chested, I couldn't run, all of those things. And people said, Mike, that's going to hold you back. Well, in fact, it didn't. So I said, no, I'm going to use all these things that are wrong with me, and I'm going to prove that I've got a greater strength as a result of it. So that's the first thing. I think the other one is always to think about why you're doing what you're doing, and never just to accept, oh, I'm going to be, studying this, going on a school trip today. I'm going to be reading a book today. All of these things. Think, why are you doing it? Because if you tell yourself why you're living your life, you get this surge of energy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You don't just do the thing. Don't just read the book. I'm enriching my mind. I want to bring more happiness to people. I want to make myself broader and more understanding of the world. Purpose is really important, and we so focus on the what we're doing and the how we're doing it, but very rarely the why. And I think if you're a child at school, then why are you going to school? Is it to become, cleverer, better? Is it to become a richer person? Is it to become, a more knowledgeable, more aware person? And, do you have a dream? Like the guy who wants to cure Alzheimer's. And your dream might change. It might change. It might be that, I want to cure Alzheimer's, might turn into, I'm going to go around the world and I'm going to work with older people to make sure that they can live with Alzheimer's and enjoy their life, going through this. Yeah. So I think this thing about purpose, it starts young. It's not, when you're old enough, they'll tell you about purpose. It's not. It's, why did you get up in the morning to go to school? To become more knowledgeable, to meet people, to learn about myself, to do something positive in the world. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. So first, turn the disadvantage onto an advantage, and then start. And number
Yes.
two is knowing the why we are doing what we're doing. I think the talking today is phenomenal. I really like it because for a very long time, I feel that something was wrong with us because we keep treating people with title, and then we're greeting people with how in that set of value, and maybe that set of value is not right. And then you mentioned the word that humanity, when you were in the lowest point in your life, then you start to realize the importance of connectedness, the importance of people as a human level. And then
Yeah.
if we all can know why our existence is to be and what brought us here for, and then we can treasure life a lot better, treasure what going around us, and be more grateful of how things are. And perhaps we can create better world, better family, better community. And Mike, we really appreciate you spending your morning on a Monday with us in the audience and share your outstanding story. And this is a real life story that you had, and we really admire of the courage, the courage go against all odds in the very worst situation, and then still knowing that there's always better things away for tomorrow. So Mike, thank you so much. We love to see you in person sometimes. If you travel to this part of the world, if you ever go to Vietnam, please send us an email. You have our contact, or Vivian and Han, say, hey, I'm in town, come and visit, and then we're so happy to do that. All
I'd
right?
love to.
Yes.
And thank you very much for picking me out to talk to me. Thank you.
Thank
It's been
you.
a privilege.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Wish you all the best.
Wish you all the best.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.